All right, guys, we're back for week 7 of the Contender series. And, I think this is a pretty weird week, to be honest. I don't love a lot of the matchups on here. I think a lot of these matchups are honestly pretty close. And even in the ones where it's like a heavy favorite, I feel like there's a good chance that the underdog can find a way to win. And those are always harder weeks to predict. We had our worst week last week with 2 and 3. Usually we're 4 and 1, 3 and 1. We've never really dropped 2 on one Contender series, let alone 3. I think one week we went 3 and 2. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I think this is a decent week in terms of the matchmaking, and I think that there's a good chance that some of these guys that look like for sure wins can come in here and not look nearly as good when the fight actually takes place. So we'll kick it off with the first fight up. It's in the strawweight division. You have Rose Conceição taking on Alexia Tata. Conceição 7-0 undefeated. Tata 10-1. Honestly, I think Rose is the more technical girl. From what I've seen, she can fight orthodox. She can fight southpaw. Throw good combinations, throw some head kicks, throw some body kicks. She's real good at using those long, straight punches, and she has good check hooks as well. Very, aware of where she needs to be when she's fighting these girls, getting the outside foot, getting to the correct angles, throwing her combinations. She can also wrestle. She has okay defensive wrestling, but I feel like it's kind of the situation where her opponents will make mistakes, which will allow her to either find a submission of her own or wind up in a top position or work her way back up to the feet. I think the better grappler in this fight is Tata. I think that that's going to be her biggest advantage, is those big blast double legs, big explosive movements, big explosive takedowns. She has good striking as well, but I would give the striking advantage to Conceição. I think she puts her combos together a little bit better. I think when it comes to the power, it's probably on the side of Tata, but when you really look at this fight, it's probably one of the hardest fights to predict on the entire Contender series this week, because I don't think Tata is bad. She has really good explosive takedowns, goes for submissions, works to the top position, but sometimes can get a little overzealous and wind up in a bad position because she goes for submissions too fast or doesn't really settle into her positions, and she'll allow the opponents to kind of win the scrambles. Tata has good power on the feet, decent overhands, a good jab. I would think the best strike coming out of Tata would be her jab, while the best strike from Rose Conceição is going to be her check hook. She has good check hooks from orthodox, good check hooks from southpaw, and I do think that this fight is close, but I am leaning towards the side of Conceição. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that she has an undefeated record, because 10-1 versus 7-0, I mean, they're pretty close in terms of overall opposition, and her opponent has more fights than her, but I like Conceição. I think she can put combinations together a little bit better. I think she's going to have higher volume compared to her opponent, and I really think that's what's going to make the biggest difference. It's going to be the volume and output of Conceição and her ability to, I think, win positions on the mat and work her way back up to the feet, even if she does wind up on her back. So I don't think Tata's a bad fighter. I think she can definitely win this fight, but I'm going to go with who I believe to be the better fighter overall, and I think that is Conceição. So give me Rose Conceição to win this one. I'm going to go 29-28 unanimous decision. Could be a split. I think if there's a finish in this fight, it might come from the side of Tata, because she has, like I said, decent boxing, pretty good power in her hands, and a solid jiu-jitsu game. But I think Rose is going to be able to outpoint her and catch her coming in. So give me Rose Conceição, 29-28 unanimous decision. All right, the next fight up is going to take place in the featherweight division. You have a battle between a returning fighter on the Contender series in the 13-1 Kevin Vallehos taking on Cam Teague, or Teague, however you want to say his name. He is 7-0, while Vallehos, like we said, is 13-1. Chaos Cam Teague, or Cam Chaos Teague, 7-0, coming off a win over Austin Lingo, who didn't have the greatest career in the UFC, but it is UFC level opposition. When you look at Kevin Vallehos, he was on the Contender series, lost a decision to Gene Silva. It was a unanimous decision, but he was in the pocket, he was trading, and judging off what we've seen from Gene Silva inside the UFC so far, I think that just goes to show you how tough a guy like Vallehos is. Off the Contender Series, he won a fight via third-round rear naked choke against Maximiliano Perez, and then came back and won with an overhand right knockout in the second round against Gonzalez Contreras. That was in March 2nd of 2024. Prior to that, it was December 22nd, 2023. When he was on the Contender Series, that was September 5th of 2023. So a year since we've seen him on the Contender Series. He was on last season. He's now going to be on again. And breaking this fight down, man, I like Vallehos. I think he uses good boxing. He moves his head well. He keeps his hands high. He comes back with decent counters, and everything that this guy throws with his boxing combinations is clean and technical. I mean, this guy's got good check hooks, a good 1-2 down the middle, good cross hook, good hook cross. He puts his combos together well. He moves well, and he doesn't really overextend and get himself caught up in bad positions. Even in fights where he can get hit and beat up, kind of like the Gene Silva fight, he still has to keep the opponent's defense honest and come up the middle with uppercuts, come around the side with a hook. And I think that's the biggest difference in this fight is Cam Teague is also going to be a pressure fighter, and he's going to be coming forward, getting in the face of Kevin Vallehos. But the biggest difference between Silva and Cam Teague is that I do not believe Teague takes shots as nearly as well. Not so much that he doesn't take the shots well, but he's more available to be hit than Silva. He doesn't roll with punches as well as Gene Silva. He doesn't catch punches on his shoulders, catch punches on his hands, and I think that's going to be a problem against a guy who is such a technician, at least in the boxing department, like a Kevin Vallehos. I think Vallehos is going to be able to land his combos. He's going to be able to land his counters, but he did have problems with the forward pressure of Gene Silva, and it did kind of break him down the stretch. And if you go and you watch Cam Teague take on a guy like Lingo, Austin Lingo was piecing him up. He was landing, shots to the body, shots up top, kind of like a Gene Silva, but Cam Teague was just coming forward. He was, taking the shots, blocking, not getting overzealous, not getting overwhelmed, and he was finding ways to come back into the fight. Good uppercut, good elbows, good knees inside the clinch, good knees up the middle, good 1-2, come back, cross hook. He catches shots, he sees shots coming, but he does get hit. And I think that's going to be a problem against a guy like Vallehos, because I think Vallehos is much too clean for a guy like Cam Teague. But in the same token, the pressure and the forward pressure, the combos, and the boxing of Gene Silva is what made Vallehos kind of have to get in his shell at certain points. But going to a decision against Gene Silva, who is coming off his most recent win, which was a TKO over Drew Dober, who's one of the best stand-up fighters in the UFC, and a very durable one at that, even though the fight got stopped by a cut, I think that just goes to show you how good a guy like Vallehos is. He did lose that fight. It was pretty clear that he lost, but he was never out of the fight. He was always fighting. He was always coming forward. He was always trying to throw back, even when he was getting kind of beat up a little bit. And I think Cam Teague is tough, but Teague gets hit a lot, and I think the boxing of Vallehos is going to be able to crack the chin of Cam Teague, but it could again be a similar situation to where Vallehos is kind of piecing him up, but he gets tired, and Cam Teague might just be able to find a way to finish the show. A second round, a third round TKO, just a battle of attrition. But if you can last with a guy like Gene Silva, I do think you can probably last with a guy like Cam Teague. I'm going to go with Kevin Vallehos to get the job done here on the Contender Series. Come back for the second time. We always like those guys who come back with the second Contender Series shot, and more times than not, they're going to be successful and probably win via finish. I'm going to go with Kevin Vallehos. I think he gets the job done via submission. I know he's mainly a boxer, but I think he's going to kind of hit Cam Teague a little bit too much, and then down the stretch, I think Teague is gonna, shoot a bad takedown or get taken down himself and give up his neck and get submitted with a rear naked choke. So give me Kevin Vallehos, late second, early third round rear naked choke submission. I'm gonna go second round rear naked choke sub. I think he finds a way to win a scramble on the ground after the amount of shots that Teague is going to be able to take, because Teague is a tough guy as well. This is a tough fight, probably the best fight on this week's Contender Series, but I'm going to go with Kevin Vallehos. Give me Kevin Vallehos, late second round rear naked choke submission. All right, the third fight of the night is in the light heavyweight division. You have Francesco Mazzeau, who comes in undefeated at 4-0, taking on Kevin Christian, who comes in with a record of 8 victories and 2 defeats. Out of the 8 wins of Christian, he has 7 finishes, 4 subs, and 3 knockouts. On the side of Mazzeau, out of his 4 wins in his pro career, he has, I believe they're all finishes. Yeah, all finishes. One was an arm injury, one was ground and pound in under a minute. One, he was winning the fight, he was losing the fight against Angus Hewitt, and then he landed like an illegal knee, or he got hit with an illegal knee on the ground and ended up losing, but it looked like he was breaking in that fight. And then 37 seconds into round 1, a knockout over Vanderlei Jr. Honestly, Mazeo looks the part. You know, when you really look at this guy, he's built like a fighter. He has vicious knockout power. We saw him throw a spinning back fist to a right hand that knocked out his opponent. It was a brutal KO. That's probably the biggest highlight reel, at least, of his professional career. Kevin Christian is a guy who is known for his jiu-jitsu, but he doesn't mind getting into a brawl. And that's what makes this fight kind of an interesting predicament, because he could be winning the fight on the ground, and then he might just get on the feet, try to land some pull counters, try to throw some big combinations, and might get clipped and get knocked out himself. The one thing you don't want to do against a fighter like Mazeo is just stand in the pocket and trade. Now, Mazeo is hittable as well. I think that the upper trunk movement and the head movement of Kevin Christian is probably a little bit better than Mazeo, but I also think Mazeo is a little bit more technical, a little bit cleaner, and a little bit crisper in terms of his overall striking. I think Christian has the biggest advantage when the fight gets to the mat, but the question is he going to want to use his takedowns? Is he going to want to use his wrestling? Is he going to want to get on the top position? I think that is going to be his biggest advantage and probably his, path to victory. But if you go back and you watch his fight in the LFA against Miguel Porto, this guy came into the fight as a plus 350 underdog. A 3-1 underdog to lose to this Porto guy, and he got clipped and dropped in the first round, got hit with a brutal left hook, and looked like he was going to get knocked out. But, he came back. He got a takedown before that, landed some ground and pound on his opponent, was able to control the positions, got rocked at certain points again in the fight, but then they kind of just stood and traded, and I felt like it was a battle of wills, and the will of Christian is what won him the fight against Porto. He was willing to go to deeper waters. He was willing to get into those brawls. He was willing to get into those exchanges. I think it was a smart idea against Porto, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be the smartest idea against a guy like Mazeo. I think Mazeo is more technical and cleaner, to the point where if you get into those brawls and you leave your chin up in the air and you try to do those pull counters, you might get clipped with a big bomb, a big overhand, a big left hook, a big uppercut, and get rocked yourself. But Mazeo, for as good as he looks, and he probably does look better technically than Christian, he still gets hit. This guy gets hit. This guy is also a defensive liability. I just think he's less of a liability on the feet than a guy like Kevin Christian. And going from a plus 350 underdog in your last fight in the LFA to now a minus 160 favorite on the Contender Series, this fight kind of screams stay away for me, because you can't go from a plus 350 to a minus 160. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Now, I don't think Mazeo is that good. I really don't. But I don't think he's a pushover. I think that he can definitely get a knockout in this fight, especially with the hands low, upper trunk movement, pull counter style of a guy like Christian, who will just stand there and trade and get into wars. I think using the wrestling and getting to his grappling early and often is going to be the best weapon for him to win this fight. I do think he has a big advantage on the floor, but I also think he has that fighter's ego, where he's not going to mind getting into exchanges, even if he's getting hit a lot, even if he's getting hurt, he'll find a way to come back. I'm going to take Kevin Christian to win the fight. I think he will get a finish in this one, but it really wouldn't surprise me if Francesco just clipped him on the chin with that, hands low style and knocked him out. But I do think Christian's the more well-rounded fighter. I do think Christian is going to come in and get the job done here, but this isn't a fight where I would say go bet on Kevin Christian, considering the fact just on recency bias, the guy was plus 350, now he's minus 160. Make it make sense. I think that this Francesco Mazeo, I think Mazeo's a better fighter than the guy he fought in the LFA. So I think you really have to just use your critical thinking skills, and it's probably a pass, because I do think Christian will find a finish, probably via ground and pound or a submission. I'll go second round ground and pound TKO. I think he will get the job done, but I don't like it from a betting perspective. But I wouldn't tell you to go bet on the underdog either. But I do think he has a path to victory, because he does have power on the feet, and he's the more technical striker and is better defensively, but that's not saying much when Christian just kind of pulls his head back and uses the pull counter style and keeps his chin, right up in the air. So give me Kevin Christian, second round ground and pound TKO. But again, I wouldn't say bet on it, and I can understand if you're on the side of Mazeo. I just don't think he gets the job done, so I'm going to go Christian. All right, for the co-main event of the Contender Series, I guess that's what we're going to call it, you have a battle in the welterweight division between Daniel Frunza taking on Vadim Kutsiy. 17-1, very good record for Kutsiy. On the side of Frunza, you have 8 victories and 2 defeats. If you look at the record of Daniel Frunza, he's got 7 wins by knockout, 1 win by decision. If you look on the side of Kutsiy, he, again, like I said, 17-1. He's got 7 submissions and 5 knockouts, 5 fights going to a decision. Last win came over Ismail Nordiev, who actually was in the UFC. He's making his return to the UFC to take on Bruno Silva at a fight night coming up, I believe. But he did end up losing to Sean Brady inside the UFC, but that's not a bad look. And like I said, he's making his way back. So, looking at this fight, I watched the tape on Kutsiy, and to be honest, I don't like a lot of what I see from him on the feet. I do not think that he throws a lot of volume. I think he kind of just looks for one big shot, and he does have power to knock you out. He's one of those guys where it's not going to be 3, 4, 5, 6 punch combinations, but he might find a way to land one big bomb on your chin and KO you. I think Daniel Frunza is much, much, much better than Kutsiy on the feet. I just think the power is the biggest equalizer. When it comes to technicality, when it comes to understanding the fight game, when it comes to understanding fight IQ, I think Frunza's much better on the feet. I've also seen Frunza lose a fight where he got taken down, wound up on the bottom, got flattened out, and ended up getting caught in a rear naked choke submission. And I think that's the biggest advantage for a guy like Kutsiy, where he's going to be able to take him down. He's going to have an advantage on the feet. And, coming into this fight with 7 wins by submission, out of 17 wins, I think he knows that he probably is going to have the biggest advantage on the mat, and he's going to look to use his wrestling. He's going to look to use his takedowns. But honestly, like full transparency here, I like Daniel Frunza a lot. I really do. I think Frunza is very technical. He has a good understanding, good fight IQ. He can finish you late. He got a finish at 4 minutes and 59 seconds of the 3rd round in his last fight against Haris Talunjic. He got 4 minutes, 59 seconds, round 3. He ended up stepping in with a brutal rear elbow after he had originally landed a cross, and then threw like a 10-punch combo and ended up winning the fight via TKO. A lot of people thought maybe it was going to go to a decision, but, he was winning the fight, I think, just overall on the scorecards. But at the same time, Talunjic looked good. He looked sharp. He landed some head kicks. He landed some combos. But I do think that the biggest path to victory for a guy like Vadim is going to be to close the distance, either hurt him with a big bomb and rock him and then go for the takedowns, or just find a way to get him to overextend and then shoot the takedown, get on top, and look to work your superior ground game, because he will have a superior ground game. But I think the defense of Frunza is pretty good. Submission defense is questionable, which, could, point you towards the side of a guy like Kutsiy. But I think that his striking, his combinations, his footwork, his movement, knowing to get the outside foot against the opposite stance fighter, good 3-2, good 1-2s down the middle. He knows the type of punches you need to throw in the certain situations that occur in a stand-up fight in mixed martial arts. Like I said, the grappling is where Kutsiy is going to have the biggest advantage, but I do like Frunza to win this fight. I think he wins this fight by a late TKO, probably late second, early 3rd round TKO. I'll go 3rd round for this one. I'm going to go 3rd round TKO just based off the fact that he might get taken down and held down for a certain portion of the fight, but he won't get submitted or he won't get ground and pounded with a TKO. But, like I said, Kutsiy has a lot of power. He does have one-hitter-quitter knockout ability, but I think the much more technical fighter, the much cleaner fighter is Daniel Frunza, and, I tend to lean more towards the better technical fighter, the fighter with the better understanding of MMA as a whole, the fighter with the better fight IQ, and I think that is a guy like Daniel Frunza. So give me Frunza to win this one. I'm going to go Daniel Frunza, 3rd round TKO. against Vadim Kutsier. I like him a lot in this fight, and I think he's the much better overall fighter. You know, from on the feet to the grappling, I think Frunza is going to get this one done. All right, and now for the main event of the Contender Series. You've got a battle. Oh, sorry. Whew. You have a battle in the heavyweight division between Bailey Schoenfelder taking on Danilo Vovodkin. I think that's how you say it. Danilo Vovodkin, 6-0. Bailey Schoenfelder, 5-0. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. The only chance Danilo has to win is a knockout. And if Bailey Schoenfelder stays on the feet and entertains the striking for too long, I do think he could get knocked out. The problem is, for Vovodkin, we haven't seen a lot of good competition. A lot of his fights are against fat, out-of-shape fighters who look like they don't even belong in the cage. You know, 0-1. I think there was a guy who was like 3-17, 1-1, 1-2, you know, 2-4. But we've said it a bunch of times that the records on the Contender Series, you can't really take too much from the records because a lot of these guys haven't had the opportunity to fight very solid competition yet. So take the records with what you will, but I do think Schoenfelder's going to show out here. You know, no pun intended. Danilo's going to be the better striker. He puts combinations together well. That's one thing I will say. Even if he's crushing cans, he throws good punching combinations, rips the body, chops with a low kick, good inside, good outside leg kicks, very solid Thai boxing. Doesn't look like he comes into fights in really good shape, but he's a heavyweight. You know, that's usually where you can get away with it. But for Schoenfelder, he is going to be in better shape. He is going to be faster. He is going to be quicker, and he's going to have that advantage with his grappling and with his wrestling. I think he's going to be able to get the takedowns on Vovodkin. I think once he gets this fight to the floor, it's going to be the Schoenfelder show, and I think Bailey Schoenfelder is going to beat up Vovodkin on the feet. Or I'm sorry, on the ground. On the feet, Danilo is live. I don't care what the odds are. I don't care how big of a favorite Schoenfelder is. He's live for a knockout on the feet because Schoenfelder gets hit. He doesn't look that great. He has a decent 1-2, a decent cross down the middle, you know, a decent hook cross. But if he stays on the feet and strikes with Vovodkin, that's going to give Vovodkin a chance to get the job done because he does have decent combinations, he does have good kickboxing, and he does have good power even if he's crushing cans. But I do think the can crusher is going to get crushed himself. I think Schoenfelder is going to get those takedowns. I think he's going to get to the top position, and I think once the fight does get to the ground, I do not think Vovodkin is going to be able to work his way back up to the feet. I think he's going to get his hip ridden. I think he's going to get pressured. I think he's going to get flattened out. I think he's going to get hit with ground and pound. I think eventually the ground and pound and the top pressure of Schoenfelder is going to be too much, and I think Schoenfelder is going to win this fight via a first round arm triangle choke submission. I could see a rear naked choke, but I'm going to go arm triangle with this one because I think it probably more than likely would end up with Bailey in mount and potentially even grapevining the legs, you know, landing some good shots, you know, sinking his pressure back down so that Vovodkin can't, you know, get up on a hip or try to shrimp his way out. And I think in that process, he's going to give his neck and arm up, or his head and arm up, and he's going to get caught with that head and arm choke from the full mount. So I'm going to go Bailey Schoenfelder to make a statement in the main event. Schoenfelder has also fought in Bellator. I think he went 2-0 in Bellator overall, so this guy is not a pushover, even though he didn't have the greatest competition. I mean, he did fight in another premier organization, so I think Schoenfelder is going to use his grappling, use his wrestling, not play around on the feet for too long, and eventually get that arm triangle choke submission in round one. So give me Bailey Schoenfelder to get the job done. First round arm triangle choke submission over Danilo Vovodkin. That's going to be it for my Contender Series Week 7 preview, predictions, and breakdown. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit a flying scissor knee to a spinning elbow to a rear head kick on the notification bell so you do not miss any of the future uploads from the premier mixed martial arts and pro wrestling channel on YouTube. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out.